Hello everyone, thank you for joining me again. I'm Ralph Dillman, and we talk about alternative senior housing options. I would like to recapture a little bit what we talked about last time, and I would like to expand on that. We came up with this idea of having someone living in the same building as the arbitrary number of 50 units, which I picked out of thin air. And that lady we called Diane, and Diane was sort of there for the event that something with the residents goes sideways. From the residents' point of view, it's like a safety net, if you wish. Someone is on hand if something goes sideways. So that's the whole idea. The cost is very, very minimum because it's basically her payroll, between her payroll and the payroll of Diane too, and Diane is in off time. That's all that has to be paid. Divided by 50 residents, it's a very small amount per month. So this concept is in Europe all over the place. And of course, not only for the event that something goes sideways, but also for regular services. And here we can expand from here on out. We can transfer the same concept here to Canada. Now, mind you, as I indicated last time, there are some limitations because as soon as we enter the health-related field, well, we are looking at licensing and so on and so forth, and there's a very fine line which has to be obeyed, that it's not becoming a retirement home. Because retirement home legislation is such that Diane and Diane too and the condo owner association would not be able to satisfy those. So this line given, it's still a valid concept, and it can be expanded from here on out. I had been asked about this condo thing. This lady said, it's all nice and dandy, but I just don't happen to have the $250,000 for that condo. Well, that's a valid point, and I would like to tell you a little bit about the difference between condo here and condo over there, because what it is the condominium concept here in Canada is fairly young, and by and large what we do here is people, let's say a couple lives in their own house for the majority of their lives, and one of the two spouses are passing away, usually the male first, and mom is left with a big house. It becomes a burden. She wants to downsize. She's thinking of buying a condo. That's usually the way it works here. Now back home it's a little different. What they do over there is winding back, as when a couple is young, getting married, starting a family, are able to buy a house. And in their, let's say, mid-20s, they're starting to buy a house. The mortgage is 20 or 25 years. And now they're 50 or mid-50, and they have the house sold off. It is then when these people are starting to think of buying a home for their older age. That means a 55-year-old, or let's say a couple in this age range, would buy a condo. And, of course, they're not ready to move in. The key is they have the condo, they're used to making the mortgage payment, they are still in their active years, they are still in their earning years, and with that they're making the payments of that condo, and in addition, of course, it is rented out. So it's an investment property, knowing that maybe 20-25 years from now they would need that apartment or condo unit for their own use, for if they're lucky enough that they're both alive at that time, for both of them, or perhaps only one. So this is a stark difference, because all this time while they're paying for that condo, they're not using it. In the meantime, it becomes an apartment for a renter. So this is the answer to the question. I don't happen to have the $250,000 for that condo. The answer is you do rent them, because for the tenant it doesn't matter if the condo is owned by mom and pop, or by somebody private, or by an apartment house owner, or by a corporation. The rent has to be paid regardless. So this is the big difference. And of course, money-wise, it totally makes sense because it's paid for by the time you need the apartment, as opposed to the North American concept where you have to sell the house in order to pay for the condo. So this is the big difference. So back to our concept, I would like to expand a little bit on this. I said in my last blog, I said that there are a few key elements older people would like to experience when they're living outside of their house, somewhere else. And one of these key elements, we are passing the threshold now by saying these condo units in that 50-unit apartment house complex or condominium complex is providing meals. And the threshold I'm talking about is the community aspect. Community is very important, substantial important for eons. Humans were living in groups, in tribes, in family. It is only the very last few decades that we came up with the idea that we isolate people in separate dwellings. At one point, the older person does not want to live alone any longer. It is then when community is wanted. Living with someone together is wanted. If it's not the own family, which brings in a different set of difficulties altogether. We see it all the time when people come here and say, I would like to take mom in, but I love her, you know, but living with her is totally out of the question. So we see this today, but on the other hand, older people are fearing to be alone, especially when they're starting to get feeble and they're afraid of falling and they're afraid of just making it through the day. It is community, it is other people they want to be around with. This is of crucial importance. Now with this concept I was talking about, it is now that the very first time we do enter that threshold and we do create community. How it is usually done over there is not like here that all people are having meal at the same time. This is the retirement home thing. What I'm talking about is that at this point in time, the condo still is the condo. It still has its own kitchen. People can still prepare their own meals. But as an option, if they feel like it, they could come to the common cafeteria and mingle with other people. Meals are cooked there and they can be consumed with other people. Now there is no must, there is also the option. How it's usually done is that our Diane all of a sudden becomes, as we talked about last time, she's partially perhaps even self-employed. She hires now Mary and Martha, and Mary and Martha do cook meals in that common kitchen slash dining room slash, it's usually called a cafeteria or a bistro. And this bistro is being run by Mary, let's call her, and Martha, and they're preparing meals. Usually it's not 7 days a week, and usually it's not 3 meals a day. Generally speaking, it is quite common to know over in Europe that breakfast is still being done by the people themselves, while lunch and supper could be consumed together with other people, and they're paid for on a per meal basis. They usually buy tickets, and then they have so many tickets for so many meals. So this is how it's done. Larger homes go a step further. They do not enlarge the area of the cafeteria in order to house 100 people. What they do is they break them up in several different bistros and several different cafeterias, and they all have their own flair. They all have their own decorations. So let's say restaurant style, Hawaiian style, or perhaps the Western style. Everything is in wood and all this and all that. So they break up the number of people and serve food in smaller cafeterias. So this is how it's being done. But the key issue of all this is the togetherness. and I will expand on the togetherness, on the community aspect in other blogs. There's another question I had which I would like to answer this way. The question was, that's all nice and dandy, but I just don't happen to have the millions of dollars it takes to build that condominium building. Well, folks, I can tell you, all of the options we are talking about, with a few exceptions, are really geared towards introducing what can be done. So if you just don't happen to have a few $1 million kicking out, perhaps you do know someone who does. Plus, the condominium concept can be built fairly inexpensive, and of course I'm cringing when I say the word, because they can be sold. So they are also more easy to be financed from the financing point of view. Go to mortgage brokers and you will see that it is actually doable even for fairly small people. I do recall when I purchased my 52-unit apartment house building in Halifax years and years ago, I did not have enough money to buy the stamps. But creative financing was possible even for small guys like me, and I was able to walk home with $1.6 million of real estate. So it is possible to do it. It is possible to introduce those concepts for us, the smaller people. Whereas the retirement home industry has totally run away, and it's really, really only for big people anymore. So this is what I have to say. The next time, with the next blog, I actually introduce another concept altogether. Community again is very much involved in that aspect, and in addition, a bonus, it can be done by you or me. It can be done by small guys. And we are still ending up with a property or building in a tune of $1 million, $1.2 million, and it can be done and financed by smaller people, financially smaller people, I mean. So keep your eyes and ears perked for our next blog, and I will introduce you the Abbeyfield concept by then. Thank you very much for listening in, and keep your questions going. I'd like to answer them. I may not cover all the angles, so I'd like to know from you your responses, and keep writing them. Thank you very much for now. Bye.
Well, it's not stopping. It's not stopping. It's so weird. It's like the button just doesn't want to register.